Hi everybody, Chris Titley here and welcome to Scoreboard.
This episode is powered by Swyftx, Australia's top-rated crypto exchange and proudly homegrown. Just like many of the athletes and business leaders we feature on Scoreboard.
Hi, it's Chris Titley here, and on today's episode of Scoreboard, the podcast, I'm joined by Rod Campbell from Learning Life Through Sport. Rod, how are you this morning?
Morning, Chris. I'm really well and great to be with you.
Mate, Learning Life Through Sport, for the listeners out there that have zero idea on what that is, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's a program that's designed to create safe and inclusive environments for everyone involved in sport, starting with junior sport. So we're talking about parents that go to sport, we're talking about umpires, we're talking about players and coaches. So we want everyone to have a great match day experience, but that comes back to how we coach and how we manage our teams, and the coaches have maximum influence. So it's designed for sporting clubs and associations in particular, or leagues and schools that want to jump on board and just create these safe and inclusive environments.
Fabulous, Rod. This is going to be a great podcast. I'm looking forward to this because I've actually touched on a number of topics about parent behaviour in multiple episodes through Scoreboard. But before we get into that, I'm interested to know how this came about, your background, and I suppose what led you to sport.
Yeah, so background's in Australian rules footy, or AFL footy as it seems to be known as these days. My father was a great player back in the day with Fitzroy, who now became Brisbane. He coached Fitzroy as well to a night premiership, and he was a great player back in the day, played for Victoria. So I was always destined to be involved in sport and footy, little athletics, things like that. So all the way through, been involved in sport, then played at a reasonable level, played state league level. I wasn't good enough to play at the highest level in football, but have coached and been a forward scout at that level, at SANFL, so state league level, also in the AFL as a forward scout, been a host family for AFL players, so Port Adelaide. I live in Adelaide, so for about 5 years I was a host family for players who got drafted into the competition. Working life, started as a carpenter, ended up being a firefighter for 3 decades, and ran a road safety program called GRAP, where I learnt so much about how to treat people and how to empower people to behave differently. And that's the case study I use in our presentation. We're lucky enough in the period that I ran that program, I was a co-coordinator, that our road toll came down substantially in our target age group, 16 to 19-year-olds, an area that's really hard to impact. But in that period, it came down by 75%. Now, we were the only change in the education space, so SAMFS RAP, Road Awareness Program, which we inherited that program from Queensland. And we never wanted to take responsibility for that. But what we did say is that the young people who were empowered and saw our message and wanted to make changes on the road helped to bring that road toll down. So I've applied the same principles to this program about empowerment rather than enforcement. A lot of times, Chris, as you know, we teach through enforcement on the road in particular. You get fined, you lose your licence. You can use your car, you can have your car impounded, things like that. In sport, we wait till the event happens and you get rubbed out. You get certain weeks, you can get rubbed out for a season, you can get fined. So we wait until the act actually happens. And what we're finding in junior sport is most people that run sports, CEOs and general managers, are spending most of their time mid-season putting out spot fires for behavioural issues. So it's an inherited behaviour, which in the presentation we identify, and then we show our solution, which we're present at the moment. We're only 2 years old in 5 states in Australia. We're actually launching in New Zealand at the end of the month. So we're really happy with the progress of the program and the impact it's having.
Fantastic. In regards to, you mentioned a couple of things there in terms of empowerment, not prescription, education. I'm curious to know who your target market is. Is it the broader? Is it just parents, or is it team managers, or is it state managers of associations, etc.? And who can apply some of these topics? I suppose we can go into a little bit, but where you can go about, I suppose, signing up and who you're targeting.
It's all encompassing. So initially we were approaching sporting leagues and associations. So once we get the CEOs on board, or they want it for their league, then we want to present to the coaches. So the coach of every team that's participating in their competition. So if you've got under 8s right through to under 18s, we want to talk to your coaches. We want to sit them down in the room and do a live presentation, and we get to make commitments to each other. So The definition that we use for culture, so we're not going in saying we're going to change culture, but we want to enhance culture, is used from Daniel Coyle and the Culture Code. So we talk about culture being a set of living relationships working towards an agreed goal. It's not who you are, it's what you do. So if we think about that as a definition, have we been doing that in junior sport? Are we building relationships? Who builds the relationships? And we all agree that the coach has maximum impact, so he or she needs to build that connection and that connection. So we're aiming at the coaches. We want to get the coaches' bums on seats. And as we work through the podcast, I can tell you how we do that.
Excellent. I'd love to deep dive into that, but I'm just also curious around why you have chosen your background in terms of experience in road safety and being a firefighter to sport. Are you seeing instances in sport firsthand? Did you see lived experiences, or are you getting some data from organisations saying, look, there's a bit of a problem here. How are we going to go and change it?
Yeah, I think the data's definitely there, but the lived experience has always been there. So we haven't changed the way that we've behaved. And as much as I'll speak to some sporting organisations and they'll say that they've got the best equipped coaches, they've done all the modules online and they're well equipped and they're good skill coaches. And then I'll ask the question, what's your match day environment like? How are you treating umpires? What's your retention of umpires in your sport like? Is there anxiety at events when you might play a certain team? So they're the areas that we want to get on top of that haven't changed, because we haven't gone with this approach where we want to create these living environments where we're all on the same page, where we make commitments to each other. We also we'd invite coach, assistant coach and team manager. Ideally, we'll get 2 of the 3 there from each team at a presentation. The reason behind it is just being a firefighter, we get exposed to life-changing situations and life and death on a regular basis. Now, there's 2 ways we can go with that. Some of my colleagues and lots of people who work in the emergency services, they do suffer from post-traumatic stress. And also, it is like suicide's a real issue in those areas. We don't talk a lot in those areas. So I've tried to look at the things that I've experienced, and I do see life through clear eyes because I understand the tenuous hold that we have on life. So I want to make the most out of life. So being able to impact a lot of people in the road safety space, which was largely done in South Australia, but we had the opportunity to do it in other states in Australia, to AFL footy clubs, to sporting teams right across Australia, gave us the opportunity to make a change. For me, jumping back on a fire truck, I felt a little bit unfulfilled, and I saw this other area in life that needed attention and just wanted to throw wholeheartedly into that and try and make a difference.
Fantastic, Rod. And then in terms of, I suppose, the popularity of community sport and children's sport, we had Tim from Sports HQ saying there's something like 35,000 games a weekend or something that they monitor in terms of scoring, etc. With that comes incidents, and with that comes, I suppose, parental behaviour. In terms of leagues and statements that have been made publicly, are we seeing any sort of change, broadly speaking, over incidents and public behaviour, or is it still happening every weekend?
I think it's still happening. We see lots of examples from all over Australia, and now just touching on the New Zealand space, we see similar examples there. I think something that's really horrible in society and a scourge on society is that youth suicide is now the biggest killer of young people. And I think we have a responsibility in sport to create these safe and inclusive environments. An example is if we bring young people in to be umpires or referees in sport. I had an example in South Australia a couple of years ago when I started the program, where our junior sporting body brought in 200 new teenage umpires into junior umpiring. I spoke to the umpires coach, said, that's great. He said, yeah, 2 umpires at every game. Fantastic. I said, what's your challenge? He said, at the end of the year, we've got to replace 200 umpires. And I said, why? He said, because of abuse. I said, so what are we doing about it? And he said, we're trying to teach resilience. And I said, how do we do that? And the answer wasn't clear. And then my next question is, what responsibility does the governing body have to bring, if we bring 200 people in to learn to be umpires or referees, and then they're thrown to the side at the end to manage their, let's say, mental ill health. Now, this is no good. And I mean, another example, Chris, I can give to you is one that was in the Herald Sun in Victoria, where the headline was "Teen Ump Abuse Must Stop." And the story went along to say, where else in society, could two adults, let's say you as a coach, me as your assistant coach, stand on the side of a field and just hurl abuse at a 14-year-old kid, which is potentially the umpire, okay? Anywhere else in life, that's called child abuse, okay? In sport, you can come out on any weekend and you can just abuse someone else's son or daughter because they're umpires, and that's okay because that's our history and that's what we do. Well, it's not okay, and we need to start to stand up. And one of the sayings that I use is that, and you would have heard it, certainly, and it came from a former Army General of Australia, Scott Morrison, is that the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. So, if we're going to accept this standard, we're complying, we're complicit, we're saying it's okay. We need to do something about it, but we can't just tell people what to do. We need to teach them, and we need to get an emotional connection with the people involved, get them to make commitments to each other together. So example, imagine in our program, we got all our coaches sitting together in a room. We identify the types of coaches and club people we are by definition on the night. I say, if you ever argued an umpire's decision or referee's decision at junior level, we're going to call you a irresponsible coach, okay? A responsible coach would be someone who never argues and has never argued an umpire's decision. So I put my hand up at the start as an irresponsible coach. So I say, if you've ever argued an umpire's decision, put your hand up. So we get the whole room putting their hand up. At the end of the presentation, when people are emotionally affected by what they've seen, we get them to make a commitment going forward on how they want to be. Now, it's really powerful when adults put their hand up and they agree that they want to be responsible coaches and club people, which means, by definition on the night, that we won't argue umpires' decisions, right? So our three values of the program are sportsmanship, respect, and try your hardest. In relation to respect, we just teach one reaction to a free kick when it's against you. In AFL terms, it's zip lips, put your hands up, okay? So please, whatever sport is watching this, just apply it to your sport. My background, to be authentic, is AFL, so we use that as an example, but it applies to all sports. Zip lips means you're never arguing an umpire's decision, okay? So that's called respect for an umpire. Now, Chris, I would ask you, are there levels of respect, or do you respect or disrespect?
Well, I reckon it's probably binary, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. So we put that to the room. Are there levels of respect? So if you're arguing umpires' decisions, you're choosing to disrespect. Okay. So the opposite to that is respect. So we just stop arguing umpires' decisions. Now you might say, well, how do we do that? Because we're brought up on that. Well, I think it's pretty easy, and this is what we teach. As coaches, don't watch the decision, watch the reaction of your player, because that's coachable. Okay. We can coach the reaction. So take the heat out of the decision. Don't watch the decision. All right, coach the players. And if we teach one thing, zip lips, arms up, that's what we're teaching. Now, if you want to be an umpire's coach and you want to argue umpires' decisions, I was at my son's under 15 and a half football yesterday, and I had people sitting behind me arguing every decision. I was just biting my lip. I had my elderly mum with me, and I didn't want to make a scene. But it's just horrible. Like, it's almost a sport in itself to argue the umpire's decisions. So teach the coaches, teach the players. We're not going to argue decisions. We're going to be respectful. There's a whole lot more to the program, but in the respect space, it's black and white. We won't argue umpires' decisions. Watch the reaction. That's coachable. If you want to go and coach umpires, go and coach umpires if you've got an issue.
And Rod, I'm interested around the technique that you mentioned about the hands up and the zip the lips. Can you talk about the rationale behind that and how that came about and what that means, I suppose, and particularly in some instances of maybe AFL, for instance, the hands up might end up being a bit more of I remember they used to get 50-metre penalties every now and then for putting the hands up, shaking, etc. Can you talk about the actual deep down emotion around that and what that means?
Yeah, so the principle behind it was just taught by my dad as a kid, never to argue umpires' decisions because they don't change their minds. And then developed it through coaching ACES, which is an Australian Combined Emergency Service footy team I was lucky enough to coach for 14 years, and seeing poor behaviours of both teams initially before we got involved as a coaching group, and just having these principles. And the two principles there were sportsmanship and respect, and that respect needed to be shown through the way that we manage decisions of umpires. And so we developed it there. The beauty with teaching young people is it's a lot of fun to teach, and you need to teach it and you need to practice it. It's not do this, it's practice it. So with young people, we might talk about Auskick for Australian rules footy. Apply it to your sport if you're listening, if it's rugby or soccer, whatever your sport is. But you teach it from a young level. So blow the whistle. So zip lips, arms up. So we just practice it. Then we have little practice matches, and I'll give decisions that aren't right. And if the kids are reacting to it, we'll stop the game. Okay, we've got one reaction. So we teach it. We get kids to lay on the ground and say it's a free kick against you. When I blow the whistle, stand up and watch your reaction. So we're teaching it. So they just jump up. Once their hands go into the air, that shows everyone in our team. So this demonstration of hands in the air, as distinct from probably what you're describing, Chris, is more hands out. This is hands in the air. This is a strong movement. So you're now working on the mark. So you're showing work ethic. But you're showing the rest of your team that you're good sports. And you're also showing the parents on the sideline that we're good sports. Because our parents are all in on this as well. When we sell these 3 values as a coach who wants to coach with the values of sportsmanship, respect, and trying your hardest, we show that to the parents. The next training run, we don't train. We just get all the parents and caregivers in the room, and we get the players in the room, and we talk about the 3 values that the league or association supports, that our club supports, and that I, as a coach, support. Now, there might be coaches out there listening saying, well, hang on a minute, I'm a great skills coach and I'm enthusiastic and I'm doing a great job. That's awesome. Don't change any of that. We just have 3 values in the background, which are the spirit in which we behave when we compete, and they're based around sportsmanship. It's hard to argue that we want to be good sports. You can see the difference between good and bad sports. And right at the moment in tennis, we see great examples. Sabalenka, who's the female number 1, we see how she reacts when things go bad and don't go her way. And she smashes her racket and she doesn't recognise the opposition. But then we see right at the moment players like Alcaraz and Sinner, when they lose, they're very humble, they're very respectful. And manage those situations really well. They're taught behaviours. I'm sure those people are taught. And we get the opportunity, we get the hearts and minds of our young people to teach them life lessons. So if we take sport away from scoreboarding and winning to teaching life lessons, what we're actually doing is taking the anxiety out of winning. Okay, so that performance anxiety that we suffer because we're all based around winning, we're just rewarding effort. Well done, mate. You tried your hardest today. Good job. Wow. If I try hard, I get a pat on the back, as distinct from at the end of the game, bad luck, mate, bad luck. We lost again. Bad luck strikes every time we play sport. Kids might not want to play sport anymore. They might just jump on their devices. Like, they're probably doing that enough as it is. But if we reward their effort rather than their outcomes, there's a whole new myriad of things that happen. In fact, if we're doing that and teaching that life lesson, Chris, if you want to employ someone in your business, do you want someone who tries hard? Do you want someone who gives effort? Very distinctly, it's not do your best or try your best. Best is an outcome. Personal best. No. This is effort. You can't always get a personal best. So we want you to try your hardest and reward effort. It's the same at school. We should be rewarding our kids for their effort, not their high marks. If they're trying their hardest and they're a B or a C student, awesome. They're learning these life skills, so when they go into the workforce, they're going to be trustworthy. They give honest effort. Fair chance they're going to be honest people if they're giving honest effort, Chris.
Some of the athletes that I've spoken to about high performance, about controlling the things that they should control. I mean, they want to get a PB, they want to get a gold medal. I get all that, but I ask them, I say, what's, in your own right, there's some things you can't control. There's the weather, there's all these other things. And they always come out and say, look, I want to give the best version of myself, and whatever happens, happens. And it happens on AFL grand final days and whatnot. There's not much more that you can do about, trying, mention about trying your best, but also giving your best and giving the effort that is required, and then see what happens, because it's incontrollable sometimes. I'm also curious to know.
Just that vernacular there, Chris, though, you went straight back to best. Give your
I
best,
did, but I corrected myself after listening to you.
We want hard. We want to try. We want effort, not best. We want to try your hardest. Yeah,
that's a good point, and one that I think requires education.
It does. And look, I think I don't want to skip over. Like, Ash Barty is probably the classic person in this situation who really struggled with performance anxiety, and once she found her purpose, and I've listened to podcasts about her, and in relation to her purpose, it doesn't say what it is, but I reckon her purpose was to be a great role model, like the old-fashioned tennis player. And she was amazing. And once she lost that performance anxiety and just went out and was behaving as a good person, within her tennis, because her tennis didn't define her, but her behaviours ultimately do. That's how you get remembered. And you think of other tennis players that don't behave well, don't want to use their names, and the ones that do. So it's all about preparing us for life. It's all part of life. And being a great role model when you're at the top is amazing. And we do have that responsibility if you're on TV and you're seen all the time, as an example.
I'm curious also, Nerd, with the famous, I suppose, the levels of sport now becoming more famous, more money, more social media, more things that people see, that these behaviours from the elite, as you mentioned, some instances of elite behaviour where they are not just putting their hands up and zipping their mouth, they're having a good old crack at the official, what that means and how that can change.
Well, I use in the presentation, and I'm not knocking the person, just the behaviour. I use an example of LeBron James and his reaction to not getting a foul called for him, and where he goes down in absolute tantrum mode. And then you watch everyone, like he enables his players, his teammates, to behave in the same manner. And the little video piece that I show, and I don't know if you can get it up, potentially use it, but when I show it and when it pauses, you see these people in the crowd and just the fierce look on their eyes and the daggers that are centered at the umpire or the referee in basketball. Now, they're the one person that has no support. The case that I make is that if that's Roger Federer and he didn't get a foul, he's not complaining one bit. He's just accepting the umpire's decision. Now, if LeBron did that as one of the highest, one of the best basketballers in the world, we're following that example. But if he's throwing a 39-year-old tantrum, hitting his hands on the ground, it's likely that young people are going to behave the same. Yeah. So we need to be doing it at the top level, and it needs to be called out. And sometimes when you're the best, it doesn't get called out because we just let them be, or that's just them, or we need to make it better than just them if they're going to be role models. And again, with the mental ill health that we have at the moment, I'm no expert, but if we can create these environments where we can thrive and feel safe and comfortable to behave in a certain way, and that means supporting our umpires and our referees, because, Chris, they're imperfect. Just like you are as a podcaster, like I am as a podcastee, I'm imperfect. So are umpires, so are referees. If we go into sport understanding they're going to make errors of decision, just like I will as a coach, just like our players will, that's okay. It's swings and roundabouts. I think Luke Beveridge, if people follow AFL, he handles it really well. The commentators try and get him to arc up about umpires, and he just says it's swings and roundabouts. Like, he's classy. When you hear coaches say that, they're classy and they understand that this is for the betterment of everyone. It's not all about me and my team, and I'm not going to accept it like that. It is swings and roundabouts. At the end of the day, we all know it ends up about 50-50. Take the emotion out. I go to the sport. I don't react to any decision. I just don't. Well, it's just a waste of time, and I want to set a good example for my kids, because usually if you're at a major sporting game and you're behaving hideously and just like at the end of a game when you lose and you're just booing and abusing the umpires, well, what are we teaching our kids? We teach them that when you lose, you abuse and boo umpires because it's their fault. It's not, and we need to be better than that.
I'm also interested in, and we've had this discussion prior to the podcast around the parents' behaviour through the game, not necessarily on an individual decision, but little niggle points, and also, from a child's point of view, the sound on the sidelines, which can be directed at either a child playing or a referee of the. And it happens quite a lot when it comes to drop catches. It comes in cricket. It happens quite a lot. Maybe an umpiring decision when it's an LBW and everyone thinks it's out, but it's given not out, or a run out that was definitely out, or a 50-metre penalty, or a drop mark, etc. Or on the sideline, people, maybe mutter under the breath, as you might have experienced, going, "Oh, ball," or like, "Oh, that's 50, come on," or like those little things through the game. Not necessarily direct at one-on-one, but also just a comment that you can hear. It happens frequently. And, I don't, as you said, the awkwardness around trying to engage with the conversation with someone or another parent, confrontation is hard, I'd imagine. How are we going to get rid of that if it is something which should be, gotten rid of?
Yeah, I really like the way that you have brought that up to me before, and it's not something I've considered. I'm more the real vocal ones that everyone hears. I think we're still trying to manage what the decision is, and it may take a generation to start to get it right. But I think that's the next level of looking at it, where we're not even sighing. I do understand that we need to get our emotion out. What I don't understand is that an example of, if you did, and I'm not recommending anyone does, but if you went to an AFL game or an NRL game and you heard people going crazy at the umpire and going nuts, I'm not saying to challenge them with their behaviour, but I have discussed it with people before. And there is a thought that goes around that says, hey, I paid my money, I'll behave however I want to. Okay, so it's good for my mental health. Basically, let's get it out of your system. And some people might agree with that. Okay, so you go to an AFL game and you get it out of your system. What do you do the next day when you go and watch a kids game? This is now a learnt behaviour. So you go to the kids game and you'll get it out of your system. But this time you're going to dump all of that on a 14-year-old kid that's an umpire. Okay, now this is bordering on child abuse again. So for your mental health to be good, make a 14-year-old kid, someone's son or daughter that's an umpire, make their mental health bad. How can that be okay? I just think we need to look into the way we're behaving and the excuses that we use. The under your breath stuff that you're describing is next level for us to try and get on top of. I think in the first instance, it's that outward yelling, screaming, booing, blaming, abusing. There's an example that I use in the presentation where I was at a game where Brisbane played against Adelaide in Adelaide. The games are dedicated to the prevention of domestic violence against women, and we all agree that's a really good cause. At the end of the game, it ends up a draw, so we've got both teams booing the umpires. Now, at this point, potentially there's a female goal umpire coming off the ground. So now we're abusing a female umpire. But 4 quarters before, we actually stood for 30 seconds to recognise the people we'd lost through domestic violence. Then within 4 quarters, we're back to abusing potentially women. And if anyone's sitting there feeling really uncomfortable with that, think about this. If there wasn't a woman there, it would be okay, wouldn't it? Just abuse the men, because they don't have mental health issues. They don't have families. They don't have work to go back to where they've got to try and manage these situations. They're in there to help the game. We don't have the game without our referees and umpires. So let's respect, not half respect, 3/4 respect, respect. Let's bring in and teach our younger people not to argue decisions, to accept the decision, because in life we need to do that as well. We're not always right. You can't argue everything. So once again, it's a life lesson we're teaching.
Yeah, 100%. I'm also, so we've got obviously the higher level problems with the abuse, and then that's that flow down effect on that child that's umpiring or volunteering, etc. Then you've also got the under the breath stuff, and then you've also got the nudges, like at the basketball. Everything is very close in basketball, and you might get a parent or so and say like, oh, that was a travel before. Do you see the travel stuff like that? Little niggles. I think that's equally as bad as abuse.
I agree 100%. So once we can manage the way that we behave and the example that we set for people around us and have an expectation of high standards, so that's what we're looking at. A couple of years ago, we had something like 30% of basketball games at junior level abandoned here in SA because they couldn't get umpires, because of abuse. So, I mean, we've got a responsibility and we just need to get better. We can't use the old example, well, that's just how I am, and historically that's how we are, and that's what sport is. Well, it doesn't have to be, and someone needs to stand up, or we need to stand up together. And our opportunities now, we don't have to wait any longer, and getting behind a program like this, and there's some other good programs out there, we can support the way to create these safe and inclusive environments, take the angst out, and actually, what's wrong with having kindness in sport, Chris? I had someone say after one of our presentations, do we want the umpires to have fun? Have you ever considered that? If you're a coach before a game and you go up and meet the umpire and say, hey guys, thanks for being here. Awesome to have you here. I hope you have fun today. I've done that. And they look at me like I'm from outer space, but I've got to have their back. And I'll put it out there. We're about sportsmanship and respect. We won't argue any decisions. I've got your back. that gives them some confidence. These are young people just trying, right? So let's have their back. I create the environment. I'm the coach. You are when you're the coach. It's our responsibility. In relation to the parents, we get them on board early. We talk about the 3 values. So imagine you've watched our program. Next training session, we don't have a training session. We meet in the change rooms. We get the players in there. Me as an example as coach, I'll tell the players, because this is my area, I'm the coach, these are the 3 values that we are going to live by this year. Sportsmanship, respect, try your hardest. And I'll tell a little bit of a story about that. In relation to respect, we'll never argue an umpire's decision. The players know that. Then I look over to the parents. Parents, same room, parents and caregivers. Are you okay if I teach your kids to be good sports? Of course, no one's going to argue that. They want to be good sports. Sounds good. There's no heat of battle at the moment as well. Yeah, good sports sounds good. Okay, do you want them, are you okay if I teach them respect? That means they'll never argue an umpire's decision. So the parents as a whole, in my experience, 4 years of coaching, the last 4 years I coached underage Australian rules footy, they're like, yep, good, teach them respect. So that means they'll never argue an umpire's decision. Yep, great. And can you support me? Because I'll never argue an umpire's decision. Then they'll say, yeah. So it's okay for me and the kids, then I put back on them. Can you support the kids, in brackets, that you love, and the coach by never arguing an umpire's decision? Now, they get a chance to say yes or no. Well, I've never had them say no. This is the empowerment piece. We haven't tried it before. We're putting it out there. This is how we're going to behave. This is how our club wants to be seen. This is how we want to look after our young people. Well, in 4 years of coaching, I never had any issues with my parents. And I'm not saying that they didn't step out of line, but if they did, the other parents would pull them back in. So that takes another issue of coaching away, that the coach doesn't have to worry about the parents are worrying about the parents. So I'm not coaching the parents. I've put it out there, but after every game, I get them into the rooms to keep building our connection, and we'll talk about one of the 3 values that we saw during the day. We're not talking about winning or losing. We are singing the team song. When they're very young, win, lose or draw, we're singing it. We'll sing it in later years after we win, but we'll identify the behaviours that we saw today, and often we'll get the parents clapping, not because we won or lost, but because of how we behaved.
Right, I'm also interested around, you touched on winning there for a second, the competitive nature. People are competitive. You follow your team, you go watch the game, you pay money to watch the blinds or whatever it might be, and then there's a decision and the crowd starts chanting bull, on the referee's decision and all this sort of stuff, and the kids are there listening and people are screaming out, etc. The fact of that type of behaviour that filters down into under 14, Division F, etc. There's no difference, I don't think, in terms of competitiveness. Everyone wants to see their child play, but then there's a lot of parents that want to see their child win or perform or get picked in teams, etc. How are you going to break that down in terms of like winning and competitiveness and I'm the best and my kid's the best behaviour? Like, it feels like it's too far a leap to kind of change. I don't know.
Yeah, well, so what we're doing is taking the outcome out of it and make sure that we're learning life lessons. So we go back to winning is actually, the paradigm of winning is actually teaching life lessons to our kids. If that's what winning is, okay, that's what we make it, instead of the physical scoreboard winning. Because what we're doing, it's like life. It resembles life. So I'm not against winning, but I'm not against losing either. And life is about winning and losing. And resilience is taught through, like you say, in your darkest hour comes your greatest growth. But it comes through managing your way through these periods. Like, as parents, we're probably trying to create this perfect life for our kids where everything's just perfect. If we are, they're never sitting in the discomfort of life. Life is uncomfortable, but that's fine. We don't want to just lead a flatline life. That's why they call it flatline, right? That's when you're dead at flat lines. There's going to be ups and downs, and we need to embrace both, and we need to prepare our kids for both. So this is the opportunity. It's imperfect. Life's imperfect. Sport's imperfect, and that's okay. It's okay not to win. If you're trying your hardest, well done, you tried your hardest. If you behaved as a good sport, well done. If you showed respect for everyone involved, well done. You're winning every game, if that's what winning is. But winning is not the most important thing. But we change the paradigm of what that looks like. The definition of winning, if you like. For too long, it's been the scoreboard, and that's not working, and it's never going to work, particularly at junior level. And you know what? A few weeks after the season's finished, no one cares if they won the premiership or didn't win it. It's not actually important. but the connection that you make, and I said to you before, the kindness that you can have, the fact that you can play in a game and play within the rules and play fierce competitively, that's fine. You can wear that within the rules. But, I see players, I watched on the weekend Brisbane versus Collingwood, and I just watched the interaction between the players, and two players in particular, Cam Rayner and Braden Maynard, two really physical players, and they hit the ball hard and the body hard. But I saw them on 2 or 3 occasions pick each other up, have their arm around each other after the contest, and straight after the game, arms around each other. So we're fierce competitors, but we respect each other. And there's kindness in sport. Why shouldn't there be? We've taken it away. We're nasty and mean because it's all about winning. It's supposed to be fun. We created sport for fun. Let's get back to that and be kind, still be competitive, but we can be the same in business. We can be competitive but still be kind. They're the leaders that work, right? People won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So as leaders, we need to lead like that. And there's great examples like that. Craig McRae at the moment at Collingwood, Chris Fagan at Brisbane, they're leaders like that. They support their players. They're always there for them. They have a positive attitude. If it works at the highest level, it can work at junior level. Care about your people, care about other people, and be kind.
Absolutely, 100%. And they're transitional leaders, not transactional leaders. They're not looking for the transaction to win or lose, etc. immediately. They're looking about transitional in terms of changing things, changing behaviours and creating a legacy. And you've referred to a quote that was in that legacy book, obviously, about the All Blacks, about setting the standard. Rod, I'm going to ask you about a couple of things personally now. One is your scoreboard moment, which is a moment in your life which is very vivid. It's a picture that you can recall, and it's a time in your life where, from that moment, things changed.
Yes, I'm a massive fan of my dad. I love Dad. He passed away a couple of years ago, so he was kind of my hero. And I guess because he was a footy coach, I always wanted to be a footy coach. So I was working really hard towards that, like an assistant coach at state league level and things like that. And I thought that's where I wanted to be, but kind of thought coaching is a bit of almost a selfish pursuit. You just give everything to everyone's kids every year, and you might not be giving the same back to your own children, let's say. I did have a marriage breakup around that point. Just thought maybe I'm just putting too much time into sport and not into my own kids. And so I put the coaching on the back burner, but I was lucky enough to find an opportunity to be involved in this road awareness program. So 10 years in that, a mate of mine that was running it was diagnosed with cancer at the time. He asked me to look after the program. So it wasn't a moment that I thought would happen. And it wasn't a yes-no answer. It was a yes answer to help him. But I found myself thrust into this environment where we could actually potentially save lives. So going from learning to be and wanting to be a footy coach to actually being in an environment where you can genuinely impact other people's lives was gold for me. It's like, not reacting to a situation until you see what unfolds. So not being a footy coach, I made that decision. I thought that's gone and that was my love. But in the end, I was in an area where I could really impact people and help them. So that's probably the moment where I saw, well, I learnt all these, hopefully, good skills in coaching that I could apply to road safety education where you're coaching lots of young people. And hence why I still want to be in that space with learning life through sport. You can bring them both together. That's probably my moment.
Mate, that's a brilliant moment. Thank you for sharing that. A couple of other questions we've got is your all-time favourite sporting moment. And I love this question because it's so variant, but there's also some common ones that come up.
Okay, so I've said Dad was my hero. I think he coached a premiership at West Perth back in the WAFL a long time ago now. And I remember being at that as a 12-year-old and have very vivid memories. And then later he coached Fitzroy to a night premiership. And they're the two things that stay with me. And I know they pertain to my father, but being there and just seeing the joy of him, the family, and people around, they're probably, two of my favourite sporting moments.
Brilliant, love it, and I love the personal touch. Now, as part of our sponsorship with Swyftx, who have come on board to support Scoreboard and tell stories of sport, and their new little campaign, Where Can Crypto Take You? I love asking this question to people around their bucket list sporting event, and that's the sporting event that they've never attended that you would love to attend. Rod, I'm curious to know what your bucket list sporting event is.
Yeah, well, I reckon I've been lucky enough to see Collingwood and Brisbane win premierships. So I have a nephew who plays for Collingwood, so he became a premiership player, and then Brisbane, who we barrack for with all my 5 kids. So I feel like I've got them ticked off. So I could be happy just with that, Chris, at the moment. But if you stretched me, I think an English Premier League game of football, I just can't imagine. I've got English friends who are just crazy. I've got a Crystal Palace and an Arsenal fan, 2 really close mates. To be at a game with them and watch them in their element would be amazing. So that's probably English Premier League game, particularly between those two teams.
There you go. Maybe where can crypto take you? It can take you to the EPL to watch a Premier League game. And I'm fortunate enough to have witnessed many Premier League games when I was living in London, and it is an experience and a half in terms of the passion and the support around their teams. And even during the recession and GFC, people were not giving up their season tickets because it was an event that they loved to attend to. Right, I've got one final question for you, and it's some advice to parents. I'm 44. I've got 3 kids playing sport. What's your advice when it comes to watching and participating and parent behaviour on the sidelines?
Yeah, just be conscious of how you're behaving, that people are watching you, and that your kids are learning from you. And look, I just think if you can have these 3 values of sportsmanship, respect, and trying your hardest at the top of mind around your behaviours, and make sure you're not arguing umpires' decisions, and just enjoy it. You know, when the game finishes and your kids jump into the car, just say, "Good job today, mate. Well done, Dale. You did really well. It was great." You know, there's that saying that is going around, "I love to watch you play," and it's so important that we do reinforce that with our kids so they enjoy their sport and they want to play next week.
Fantastic, yes. And Simon Black, I love watching you play. Got that from his mum as well, and it meant a lot to him in terms of his life in sport, and ended up being at the high performance or highest level in terms of Brownlows and premierships, etc. Rod Campbell, learning life through sport. Thank you so much for being on Scoreboard today to share your story, the insights around your background, what you're doing in sport, the programs that you're running, some examples of some of the success that you've seen, and also some of the problems that are still remain that you're chipping away at. I really do appreciate your time and look forward to catching up and following your progress.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be part of it.